The postpartum hair regrowth is an interesting phase. I've got this little baby hair here that will not stay tucked behind my ear, no matter what I do. Hi everyone, it's Bryony. Welcome back to my channel, and today's video I'm going to be doing a Q&A because I realised I haven't done one of these since before Oren was born. I've had so many questions over the past few months about solo motherhood and various different aspects of it, so I thought that it would be really good to go onto my Instagram today and put a little box up and get you guys to ask me your questions, and I will answer them in this video. I want to get through as many as possible, so let's jump right on in. First question is, did you receive any judgment from friends when you first decided to go on this journey? I didn't actually talk about this with a lot of my friends. I had one, maybe two friends that I talked to this about. One friend who'd been through some fertility issues, so I knew I could kind of relate to her with going through the clinics and stuff, and also I wanted her advice on which clinics to kind of go with and stay clear from. And I had another friend who I talked to about it, and that was it though. But they were both really supportive and kind of fully understood why I wanted to do it, and I don't think we're really that surprised by it. So yeah, no, I've never had any judgment from anyone, friends or family really, before I went into this, at least not to my face. I'm sure plenty of people have judged me silently, but no one has ever said anything to me, so I've been really lucky with that. Are there any other business adventures you'd like to start now you're a solo mum? Currently no, although I'm somebody who always likes to kind of be looking for the next idea, and I love running businesses, and so I think I might possibly start something else in the future. But as it is right now, I'm just completely focused on raising my son, and if an idea happens to pop into my head at some point, I'll probably kind of look into it and mull over it and then look at how it might work out, etc. But right now I don't actually have any ideas or any plans for that in the future. My current plans are to focus on my social media work and sponsorships, etc., because it's the most flexible for me with working around having a child. Without a partner, did you bounce names off anyone else instead? How influential were they? I don't think I really did. I know that I mentioned a few names I had sort of been thinking of but wasn't going to use with my mum, but I never really asked her, like, what do you think about this? And she's the kind of mum who's very good at, like, knowing that's not her place to say. So if she really hadn't liked a name, she would have just gone like, okay, if I'd suggested something. And I'm not really sure. I think she probably wasn't that keen on Oren actually when I first told her about it, and she did know before he was born. My dad didn't know before he was born, not because I hadn't told him, but because he hadn't paid attention when I was using his name. I definitely talked about Oren when I was still pregnant around him and my mum, so that was kind of funny. He was the only one who I know wasn't that keen on it. I had a lot of very positive comments from other people going, oh wow, it's such a unique name, it's a nice name, which I was kind of worried about because it was such a unique name, but I really liked it, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go with it because I like it and I think it suits him, and I still stick to that. I still love it. In fact, I love his name more kind of as he gets bigger now. I think he really suits it. How did you encourage independent sleep to avoid co-sleeping? So part of this is just luck, honestly. Oren has pretty much always been a reasonable sleeper. Obviously when he was a newborn he was still waking up every couple of hours, but he would give me like a 2 or 3 hour stint at a time, and particularly when he got to like 4 hours, that was really good. That like made a big difference to me. And so I think that has really helped with me being able to have him in his own sleep space. But he's also always been in his own sleep space. He's never shared a bed with me. There's only one time I co-slept with him, and that's when he was 9 days old. I was really unwell that night, and I think my milk was kind of drying up, and he was already on the lower side with his weight, so I had him on the bed with me because I just could barely put him down. I did manage to get, I think, like an hour and a half sleep with him kind of like up by my shoulder, but other than that I've never co-slept with him. I personally do not like co-sleeping. I like my bed to myself. I move around a lot. I want a duvet. It just never was going to work. So he's never had like a co-sleep or anything. He's always been in his own Moses basket or bassinet next to me. He's never, or in the cot in his own room. He's never shared a bed with me other than that one night. I don't know if I really have any tips for it. I didn't really have to sleep train him into being in his own space because he was always there from the beginning. But he also wasn't a baby who particularly liked being carried. Like if I have a baby wrap, which I never used with him because he didn't like being held like really too tightly. He liked being cuddled and he liked breastfeeding, kind of lying in my arms, but he didn't like being swaddled up here. So I think he was always quite happy kind of going into his own space. And yeah, no, I think that's kind of all I did. So part of it is just, you know, doing that, and part of it is luck. Your thoughts on your child's donor siblings. I did a lot of research into this actually before Oren was even conceived, and I learned a lot from other people who are donor conceived about how important it was to have connections with donor siblings. Now, in the UK, there's no official system to connect donor siblings. There was recently a survey done which asked people for their views on this, and I think, well, I'm hoping that a lot of people put forwards that they would like to have the option to connect donor siblings through official routes, but currently the only way to do it is kind of like by working around it. So there are Facebook groups that you can join where you can like look for like people to say what donor they've used, and then you can see if you match. And there are also ways to do it like through genetic testing. You can ask the HFEA how many donor siblings your child has, and they can give you a number, but they can't put you in touch with them. There's no current system for that, so you kind of have to figure it out on your own. I am actively keeping an eye out in case any of his donor siblings do pop up, but currently I haven't found any. So if I do find some, I would like to make contact. My aim is to basically create a link between them, which is similar to that sort of like cousins. So maybe see them in person once or twice a year. My reasoning for that is because the one thing that I heard a lot from donor conceived people was that when you meet a donor sibling, when you're older, that relationship is so different from if you had known them as a child, and they wish they had had connection sooner. Now, I'm also concerned about like making a connection that he might not want to keep when he's older. So for me, keeping it kind of like loosely connected, so maybe meeting up once or twice a year, kind of like you might with a cousin that lives far away. That way, as he gets older, he can kind of decide whether he wants to increase his connection with his donor siblings and see them more, or if he's not that interested, then he can kind of decide to stop seeing them. But if you've only seen them once or twice a year, it's much easier to break that connection than if, say, you'd been meeting up with them monthly. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for right now, is to be able to connect with any donor siblings if I do manage to find any, and to create some kind of connection so that it's there and there's a relationship that can be built on if he wants to, but also which he can pull away from if he wants to as well. I think it's going to be a tricky balancing act, but that's kind of what I'm aiming for at the moment. One decision I have made about that, though, is that I am not going to do any sort of DNA genetic testing until he is old enough to make that decision for himself. So when he's an age that I can explain to him how that works and what might happen if we do that, then if he says yes, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it now before he can have a say in that, partly because it is possible through doing that his donor might pop up as well, and that's a sort of different relationship and a different thing I think that I need to know from him whether he's comfortable with that potentially happening. I also do hope that in the future there will become proper official routes to do this through, because there's been a lot of input from donor conceived people over the last couple of years about how important this is, and I really hope that official bodies do listen to that. But yeah, it is a tricky thing, and some people have different opinions on it than others. I'm just going with what feels right for me and my family, and from the information that I have found, and that's kind of what I'm doing with all of this, to be honest. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment with donor siblings. Anything you thought would be easier but finding it harder than expected? The thing that I probably thought would be easier but found harder the most has been breastfeeding. That journey has been something I did not expect. I very much thought it would either work or it wouldn't work, and it would be one or the other, but I've kind of been in this grey zone of kind of working, and I've been through lactation consultants, I've been through so many things with that now. It needs a whole video of its own, which I will get around to eventually, but I'm kind of not quite at the place where I want to be yet before I film it, so I'm hoping to get there soon, and then I'll be able to film a video all about that. But it has been a complete journey that has been definitely harder than I expected. The actual breastfeeding itself has never been an issue for me. Like, he's always latched well, it's never been particularly painful, it's just been about like weight gain and potential allergies and all sorts of other things that have been going on there. So yeah, breastfeeding, definitely something that's been harder than I thought it would be. And the other thing obviously is pregnancy. I did not expect that to be as difficult as it was. Tips on preparing for solo parenthood. I think this probably needs its own video because there's so many different things that you go into on that. Let me know in the comments if there are anything in particular around solo parenthood tips and stuff that you want me to cover, and I will be sure to do that. What were your fears going into it, if any? I think the only fear I really had was that I would regret it, because at the time I made this decision, I started reading a lot of comments on like Facebook groups where or not even Facebook groups, but just there were comments and posts online from people who'd become parents and regretted it. Because one of the things you're always told is like, you would never regret making this decision. And obviously some people do. And so I did become a bit fixated, I think, on that and worrying like, oh my God, what if actually all this time I've been wrong and I don't really want to be a parent and actually this is a terrible decision. That fear was something I had, and it got blown up massively when I was pregnant and having like lots of mental health issues. But I don't think I had any other fears about it. I think it was just a fear of regret. Are you still on the Sarette mini pill since having Oren? How are you finding it? Yes, I am. So I went back on the pill after my first period came back, which was when I was 15 weeks postpartum. I was so pissed about this because I was exclusively breastfeeding at the time, and I was like, this better not be happening, but it was. And even though it was definitely better pain-wise than before I had Oren, I still decided that I didn't really want to be dealing with my period, particularly while I had a little baby. So I decided to go back on the pill, and it has been fine. The only downside has been so far that it definitely affected my milk supply. So my milk supply is lower than it was before going on the pill. I suspect that's because the Sarette pill does also have a tiny bit of estrogen in it, and estrogen can affect your milk supply. Even though it is in theory a progesterone only pill, that tiny bit I think might have made the difference. I did come off it for a month to see if I could like boost my milk supply by, you know, feeding Oren on demand and pumping in between as much as I could as well. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I ended up having to take some medication, which has boosted my supply up and has allowed me to stay on the pill again whilst taking that. So at the moment it's working well. I have noticed that my mood has been a little bit lower recently. I've been on that pill now for quite some time, so I don't know if it is the Sarette pill. I'd be very surprised if it is, but I might come off it again at some point in the not too distant future just to see like how it's doing and everything. Again, my periods have become much less painful, but they are quite heavy, which is a bit annoying. So ideally, I would like to stay on it if I can, but if I need to come off it for a bit and see how I do with my mood, and also maybe if my milk supply increases again as well, then I might do that. But currently, no plans to try any of that. Have you found solutions to tag team it on difficult days? My biggest tip would be for this is use every tool in your arsenal. There are so many things for us to feel mum guilt about when it comes to raising children, like not giving them freshly cooked meals every single day and maybe giving them a pouch or a jar, particularly with weaning, how much screen time they have, you know, having a house that's perfectly clean and tidy and making sure everything's washed. There's so much to stay on top of that honestly, like, use everything you need to. So I quite happily will put CBeebies on at times if I need to go and do the washing up. I'm like, CBeebies, you are my babysitter right now, take it away. And I am also lucky in that I have my parents living nearby and they have Oren for me once a week while I work. And I generally try to squeeze in a bit of housework on these days that I work too, just so I can get things done when he's not here and really make the most of it. Although I can't get a whole lot done, even a little bit can really help. But another thing that I find has just really helped is just to kind of lower my standards. Sometimes I might look around the house and go, actually, I'd rather do a proper deep clean of the kitchen right now because that needs doing, or I'm going to tidy up the living room a bit or do a vacuum clean, whatever it is. But just kind of gently going through things I find can be helpful. Is it sometimes hard to make decisions alone without a partner to consult with? I haven't yet really had any problems with this. Like I've kind of said before, I am quite lucky that I have my parents locally and I have a really good relationship with them. So I guess if there's a really important decision that needs to be made that I'm not sure about, I will sort of bounce it off with one of them, usually my mum because I'm a bit closer to my mum, and that can be really helpful. So sometimes, you know, we forget that you might have friends or family that can be just as useful a sounding board as a partner, and that's definitely been the case for me. How do you not burn out? I have one and my husband, and on some days I just want to cry exhaustedly. Really feel for you, hun. It can be really difficult at times. Kind of like I was saying earlier on, I use all the tools in my arsenal when it comes to distracting Oren if I need some time to do something else. But honestly, I think one of the biggest causes of burnout for us is the expectation that we put on ourselves to have like a clean house, to have, you know, home cooked meals for every meal, to have no screen time, to be playing with our children and running a career and running a house, just doing everything. And honestly, lowering our expectations, or lowering my expectations, I found to be really helpful. My house is rarely ever completely tidy. In fact, it's a mess most of the time. It's clean. I have a cleaner that comes once a month as well to help, and that's something I consider a worthwhile financial investment, to give myself a properly cleaned house once a month and make sure everything is kind of done once over, and then I just have to kind of keep on top of it during the rest of the month. I do make sure that Oren has fresh cooked food, but also sometimes he'll just have a pouch, and I always make sure there's a stock of pouches or jarred food in the cupboard, particularly because if I have a day where I'm not feeling too great, I know I've got something really easy that I can use to feed him, so he's still getting fed and I'm able to not have to exert myself with things that I really don't feel up to. Also, sometimes I'll switch the TV on and we'll have a lazy TV day and he'll play down there because I'm just not feeling that great. And that's okay too. It's perfectly fine for this to be the case. If it's not happening every single day, it's fine. And your house doesn't need to be pristine. It's never going to look pristine with a child. And getting myself out of that mindset has been really helpful. Also, if you had the finances for it, invest in things that are going to really make a difference to you. So like I said before, I have a cleaner. If it would be helpful to you to have a meal prepared service, so either having meals kind of sent to you that you prepare yourself to cook, or like ready prepared meals you just literally put in the oven or the microwave, if that could be helpful to you and you can afford it, invest in that, even if it's just a few days a week. Having some structure can also be helpful. So if you say, okay, we're going to have takeaway night on a Friday, cleaning day on a Sunday, whatever, if that kind of timetable is helpful to you mentally, to be like, okay, we do this on this day, that can also be something that you can implement and see if that works for you. And also just accepting that sometimes you are going to feel burnt out and it's going to be a bit rubbish, and knowing that you haven't done anything wrong as a mother, that's just what it is. And ultimately remembering that this is just a season and it will pass. And the final question is, what is my daily schedule for feeding and naps, etc.? I don't follow like a strict schedule with Oren. I have a rough timetable of, I know that from the time he wakes up, he has an hour and a half wake window. So he wakes up, has a feed, plays for a bit, then we'll do breakfast, and then when it's been an hour and a half since he woke up, he'll go down for his first nap of the day. He'll then be up for around 3 hours before he has another nap, and in that 3 hour time he'll have his bottle, he'll have his lunch, and then he'll nurse to sleep for his second nap of the day. He's now dropped his third nap, so we're down to 2. And from that nap he will then wake up a bit later on, have a bottle as well, and then towards 5 o'clock he'll have dinner, and then between 5 and 6 I typically try and keep him awake because he hasn't really adjusted to the daylight savings that we've had over here. It's taken him a bit of time, so he's often quite grizzly kind of from 5:30 onwards, but I don't want to put him to bed earlier than 6 because I want him to sleep a longer stretch. I don't want him to wake up too early in the morning. So I try and keep him going till 6, and then we'll do his bedtime routine from there. And I adjust it if I need to go out in the day. We'll do a nap on the go, or his nap might be later, and I just kind of accept that that's going to be the case. But that's my rough schedule. I don't stick to anything from a book or anything. I've just sort of managed to gauge what his wake windows are and how long he needs to nap for and how he goes to sleep and all that. And it's just what's worked for me. So there we go. Those are all of the questions I'm going to answer in this video. I hope I managed to get around to your question, and if I did, you found the answer useful. If you have any other questions or any particular video topics that you want me to cover, whether it's regarding solo motherhood, parenthood, periods, whatever, let me know in the comments and I will add it to my list and hopefully at some point get round to it. Don't forget that if you are one of my members, one of my superstars, then I will respond directly to any questions you leave in the comments below. You can join by clicking on the join button down below, and it'll also give you some of the different membership benefits that you can get. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Do please subscribe, and I will see you next week. Bye everyone, have a great day.